This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to The Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast. Since 2015, about every quarter or so around here, we get a copy of our analytics to find out who's listening and to find out how long they're listening and where they're listening. And I tend to focus on where in the world people are listening because that fascinates me that people are listening to us in Malta and in Norway and in Paraguay. But we this week hit the top 20 podcasts in Ukraine, of all places. I'm like, I think those people have their hands full with a lot of things, but maybe, you know what, all you need is love, and maybe that's getting there. So shout out and God bless to our Ukrainian friends. One other thing I noticed, though, on the demos of who's listening is that our audience over the last year has gotten younger. And I should have done a better job of paying attention to that stuff because I think some of our content has gotten older. We have spent an inordinate amount of time recently on things like divorce and parenting and things that sort of skew to people in their, I'll just say 35 and up. So I need to change that today. I need to make amends. I need to rectify it. I'm not sure I am the expert on anything, but mostly on what millennials and Gen Zers are doing. So I brought in somebody who is an expert. I missed her when I was in New York City, so I had to circle back. She is in New York City right now. She's an author. She's a researcher. She's a professor. She's a dating and relationship guru when it comes to all the things to fill in all the blanks for that generation and a whole lot more. Dr. Aditi Paul, how are you?
I'm doing good, Brian. Thank you for having me, and thank you for introducing me in such glorious terms.
How'd you get interested in this subject matter?
I am just a nosy person.
Oh, nosiness. That's a good answer.
I'm very nosy. I'm very sneaky that way. No, but in all honesty, I've always been interested in online dating. I do have a background in computer science and communication. I'm always looking for ways to marry them. And a seamless transition was to look at technologies like online dating and social media and how they're transforming personal relationships and how we present ourselves in those relationships. So that got me interested in the landscape of online dating. And just like you discovered, the demographic of your listenership is skewing toward a younger crowd. Pew Research, according to their results, a lion's share of online dating users are young people. So I wanted to know how they're using this app, and word on the street is that Tinder is notorious as a hookup app. So I wanted to know what the heck hookup was, because I am as confused as Gen Z and millennial lingo as you are, so I'm not better off. Mm-hmm. And that got me interested in this entire area to investigate more and launch a whole book.
Huh. Yeah, I always say LinkedIn is a hooked up site if you use it the wrong way.
I read this one meme which said any app is a hookup app if you try hard enough, and that's true.
Possibly. I always say the best dating site is Earth, and get your head out of your apps. Get your head out of your apps, but we do not do that. And is it? Do you think, just on a surface level, is it because younger people are more likely to be fully engaged with their devices? So if that's where my attention is, that's where my prospects lie. Is that the easy answer?
That is an easy answer because we're always defaulting to our phones. I mean, phones are so much bigger than just a computer or just a device. It is the sun to the solar system that is our life, where it starts and ends with our phone. Our bank is in our phone. Our parents are in our calls. My boredom affixed to that is in the phone. So why wouldn't I look at my phone to get me a match?
Is part of it, though, we're using it to hide from each other, meaning it seems unfortunately, very strange now to approach strangers or to talk to somebody you don't know, that we almost need this sort of electronic affirmation before we connect. And whether that's a go back to the old days, a ping, a poke, a hello, a swipe, or whatever, that somehow it's like, oh, this person says I'm interested in this. Whereas which we've had to do for since the dawn of time, approach each other cold turkey face to face and say hi. And that seems unnatural now. And I'm not sure any of our generations, especially the younger generation, is really wired to do that now. It seems both frightening and abnormal.
Mm-hmm. And that is warranted, like the moral panic that you're having about, oh, young people are losing their ability to strike up a face-to-face conversation. And it's almost like a romanticization of what is face-to-face. And it comes in it that romanticization changes its look every single generation. Like, take it back to 1910s and 1920s when the phone came into play, or whenever the phone came into play. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like the 20s and 30s, and it's probably seemed abnormal to call somebody.
Yeah. So back in the day, like, their parents must have thought, like, you call somebody? Why don't you just go to
That's so rude. Yeah.
And say hi like a normal person. And that changed when the phone came. And then we had the internet, and then you have the AOL, and then you have email. So it's almost like we are adding these extra layers of relationship initiation, if you may.
Mm-hmm.
And with each indoctrination of technology, that landscape changes a lot. So it's not, I mean, the easy answer is to say, oh yeah, younger generation, they just have forgotten how to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
A part of it is true, but another part of it is because we have technology to initiate a conversation that our older generation or generations that did not have a phone in their pockets didn't have. And this is echoed in a really good book by Sherry Turkle, where she talks about reclaiming conversations, how younger generations, because of the phone, have lost the ability to hold silence within a conversation more than forgetting to have a conversation.
Well, and there are also more ways to entertain ourselves now than before, and engage with other people, strangers, without it putting yourself out there too much. So if that stimuli is there, and that sort of safe socialization environment where you don't have to take the risk of going on a date and whatever, and then you're sort of saving that physical encounter for truly physical encounters. You're like, I'm going to get my chit chat done in this clubhouse over here, and then when it comes time to face, well, we'll just get into the hookup over here, and we've sort of compartmentalized how we interact with each other. That's right. Yep. What was the thing that surprised you about when you started digging around into the habits of young America and elsewhere?
So my initial dig into young America started when I wanted to see the students who, I was going to call them children. I mean,
you're not that old.
So the two biggest uses of dating apps seem to be you either are there for sex or you're there for love. And I wanted to know, are there any demographic or sociological or psychological factors that differentiate between these two people, one who are more likely to use dating apps for sex or dating apps for love? And that kind of put me on a spin-off of, okay, like people who are looking at dating apps for sex, what is it called? And that's when I discovered this entire universe of literature on hookups. And then I realized that, hey, hookups happened before technology, before Tinder came into play. So how do those hookups differ from Tinder hookups? And that sparked my interest into digging deeper into some questions. For example, did Tinder really add fire to the flame that is hookup culture in college campuses? Is Tinder giving access to hookups to certain demographics that did not have access to this hookup culture before? Is Tinder more risky than meeting somebody at a college party or in your class and hooking up? Are men and women still playing their stereotypical roles when they're hooking up? Is Tinder more egalitarian? Are there any risks involved? And so on and so forth. So one question built on top of the other and built on top of the other. And I launched a nationwide survey, and I surveyed close to 900 odd students, but I could only account for 318 responses because I was looking for complete responses
Right.
that are not muddied up with, just BS responses from students. So I got 318 quality responses, and I crunched up the data both qualitatively and quantitatively to arrive at the answers.
Huh. I spoke to you briefly before about this. There was this 20-year period that gets romanticized by the older people now. That was the early 60s to the mid 80s, where it was that time between the invention of the pill and the onset of AIDS. That was this free love, anything goes. Talk about hookup culture. That was the real hookup culture. We went away from that. We became to be more conservative sexually. And I think for a while then it made us more conservative emotionally that came out of that. So maybe part of the hookup culture was people feel a little bit safer to do that again. But secondly to that, you brought up people either go to Tinder or go to any of the dating apps for either love or sex. I think that the people who go for sex also want love, and the people who want love also want sex. And it's what they're leading with in order to sort of salve their fears, meaning everybody's afraid of being hurt or being rejected. So if you're like, I'm only here for this, I can either convince the other person or myself that it's something that it's not. And the other way around, the more we have all, men and women, begun to dig deeper into our own psyches, the more I think we're playing games with ourselves to avoid these patterns of getting hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Is the lack of vulnerability that makes, or that is the true reason why we're keeping things casual. Because if you so much as say that I am in this for this, that's bold, right? I mean, it's too much.
Right.
So you want to step away from there into a zone called situationships. That's what Gen Z is in right now, where, yeah, they want to keep it casual. They're just hanging out. They're hooking up. Are you in a relationship? Did you have that conversation yet? Is he still on the app? What's happening there? So it gets muddied into this messy thing called a situationship. Like, it's a situation. I don't know who we are yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like when you go to a project somewhere and you're on a location ship because people are in a certain area together, and it's everything to avoid anything that might get hurt. But there's two parts to this, I think. I think there's the hookup culture part, and then there's the hangout culture part, which means people will meet, they'll go into a group setting, and then maybe when somebody at some point in the night, two people might break off of this bigger group. Very rarely now, in all ages of us, of people now, are we starting with two? Are we starting with just me and you? It's let's meet up, let's hang out, let's talk, and then maybe somebody's drunk enough to like, hey, you want to go somewhere else with me? And that has changed things too, because it doesn't define the traditional dating roles, and it doesn't narrow it down to it's just me and you right now. Let's see what we're going to do here.
Yeah. And that's what Gen Z is doing. The hangout is such an integral part of their hookup script. So just as an example, I was looking at one of the responses that a student gave, and the student says, I texted my friend and told her that I want to see the girl. Then she told her, and that girl agreed. I was so nervous before I met her. Then I went to her dorm and took her. Then we went out for coffee. Then we went over to our room and chilled till midnight. So like that's that is what they're talking about. They're chilling. They're hanging out. They're doing it.
I'm talking to the person. They don't want to define it anyway, because if you define it, you can get hurt somewhere. Yeah. They always say there's safety in numbers. There's emotional safety in numbers. It's just we're just two people of this bigger set, and we're kind of feeling each other out. We're like animals in a way. We're doing a lot of extra like sniffing around the herd without actually committing to each other, and that's all ages. I'm not just trying to single out the young people as ever. We're all doing that now.
Oh yeah. And there's another misconception about Gen Z is like this, their culture is this rabid sex having culture. Not really. A large majority, I wouldn't call it a large majority, but a majority of Gen Zers just stick to making out. When they're talking about hooking up, they're not having full-blown sex. It differs according to gender as well. Men are more likely to escalate than females, so that's a traditional gender behavior. But yeah, more often than not, they're just talking about lower order sexual